Hello and welcome to Todd Rolls Dice, where it's time to venture back to Middle-earth for the first designer's commentary of 2025 and of this whole new edition. So there is a full article here, beautiful Rohirrim models. I'm waiting on the Riders of Rohan refresh. I hope that we get new riders. Look, the old ones aren't bad, but they're 24 years old, 23 years old, whatever, they're old. Alright, they're old enough to drink. It's mad. I would love a little bit of a refresh to go with the beautiful refresh that the current riders the current Warriors of Rohan have. Wouldn't that be cool? But there's no mention of that. There's no mention of anything apart from one new model, which we'll get to at the bottom. But this article is just very little information. So I'm not going to read this one. In the future we may go through them. But we'll do this first bit and then we'll just touch on the updates, because there's a couple of things in here that I do want to have videos on and inform you guys about. So let's just quickly run through the article and then we'll look at what this actually means for the game. TLDR doesn't mean a huge amount. There's just a few tweaks and corrections. February is upon us, and for fans of the Middle-earth strategy battle game, that means it's time for the designer's commentary. First of the new edition. We caught up with the Middle-earth team to get the lowdown on the new edition and to discuss the clarifications and errata that are being introduced this month. A new edition is an exciting time for any game, very true. Not only do players get to experience a new rule set, but we in the design team get to see the results. The first few months are particularly exciting, with players discovering the new changes, how their favourite characters and units fare on the battlefield, and being inspired to try new armies. So all of that I would agree. The problem right out the gate with Lord of the Rings, sorry, I call it Lord of the Rings because that's what it was historically, Middle-earth strategy battle game, the problem we have right now, we are less than 2 months since release, and those 2 months were over Christmas and New Year. So it released, a week later we had Christmas, after that it's New Year, and then we're not even in the middle of February yet. So there hasn't actually been any time to look at this. There probably hasn't been any big tournaments. I don't know anything about the tournament scene in Middle-earth strategy battle game. I assume that there's bits and pieces, but we probably haven't had any of the big ones, and certainly a lot of data, which they do touch on. But people are still figuring this out. They say first few months. I mean, it's been 6 weeks, really, of playtime. Not theory crafting necessarily, but of playtime. It's still in the infancy, which is why this is a very light update. But the problem with this, and doing an article like this, we have no roadmap for Lord of the Rings, or Middle-earth. We have models that were previewed that are still not available. That model in the top right hand corner of Hera, the daughter of Helm, with the plastic one, not the resin one, but the plastic one of her mounted and her on foot, still not been released. She's the main character of the film. Still hasn't got a model that's widely available to everyone, and that isn't resin. It just seems mad that that hasn't been released yet. The other big thing that hasn't been released, and this is huge for how the game plays. The other thing is the Armies of Middle-earth. Physical book, digital download, free rules update, whatever it is. There are big heroes and whole armies that you cannot play currently in Middle-earth strategy battle game that have models, they just don't have rules. For me, the big one is Rangers, but also Glorfindel and quite a large chunk of the Elven stuff. There's entire evil factions who don't have rules. Arnor is a pretty big faction that doesn't have anything right now. I mean, the last campaign book that came out in the last edition was all around Arnor. All those brand new models that people bought have no rules. Yes, you can proxy them as other things if you want to, but that's not why you bought them, and they were resin. They were expensive models. You can't use them. Where's the speed on getting rules for miniatures that are already in the range? Where's the roadmap saying what part of 2025, or even if it's going to be 2025, is that? It's all well and good doing a designer's commentary, but if the designer's commentary isn't going to give us anything about the future of the game, apart from, yeah, there's been a few issues with the book and a few misprints, and we're tweaking a few rules just to make them clearer, tell us something more useful than that, especially in the first 2 months of the release. Give us something to look forward to. But as they say here, in this new edition it can lead to some confusion for existing players, especially when it comes to rules that have changed from previous editions. So that's really what this designer's commentary is. It's just clearing up some little moments and correcting small errors. There's a couple of rules clarifications. There is a little bit of an errata for core rulebook, Armies of Lord of the Rings and War of the Rohirrim, and Armies of the Hobbit. We'll touch on those. We do get a new model, so there is a slight glimpse of the future, but it's not exactly exciting. Bolg, Spawn of Azog, which is a Hobbit character. I don't think the character design is very good. That's not their fault. They can only sculpt what they've been given to work with from the motion picture. I will say the model isn't terrible, and I love the warg that he's riding. It's such a cool, violent pose. So it looks like a really aggressive warg. Very, very cool. I love the puppy. Rest of it I'm not that bothered about. But just to confirm, this is still a rules clarification. They're confirming that not only is Bolg getting a new model, he is also going to be in plastic, which is good. It's coming out in the coming months. So very vague on timescale, but it's on foot and it's mounted. The mounted version is on a 40mm base, and they recommend using Bolg on a 40mm base. Currently he's on an oval base. What they say here and what I would say, it shouldn't be a problem while we're in this transitional period, but if you're using Bolg, just double check that either the oval base is okay or rebase him. It shouldn't be too much of a problem, but right now just double check, make sure that your opponents and the tournament organisers are happy, and you should be fine. Probably a good idea to rebase him or look at picking up the new model, because once the new model is released he will solely be on a 40mm base, but only for match play purposes. That's the only thing they can enforce. If you want to use your old model on the old base and you don't play competitive, don't play match play, you're just playing friends and rolling dice, don't worry too much about it. I'm sure it's not going to be a problem, but it might be worth rebasing. But that's the only real interesting bit here. The rest that we're going to go into is a couple of clarifications and confirmations of how rules should work. So we're going to jump into that now. We'll start with the core rulebook, and then we'll move into Armies of Lord of the Rings and finish off with Armies of the Hobbit. Just to give you an idea, it will all be chaptered up, and there is a link to this article in the description for you to check it all out yourself. I would also be interested in what you guys think, especially about the pending releases that we do know are coming. Certainly the rules ones. How long is it fair to give them to publish this stuff? How long should we be waiting for potentially entire armies that people own and want to use back in the competitive setting that they can't? How long is it fair to wait for those? Let me know. But let's have a look at these downloads. Right, so tweaks to Midde-earth Strategy Battle Game Rules Manual. There's 7 questions here that we're getting clarification for. So first one, if a model has a special rule that states it must charge when it moves if available, can it choose not to move and therefore not to charge? Answer, no. The model will still follow all the steps of the activation phase, the second of which is start of move. If at this stage the model could charge, it must do so. Makes sense to me. That's how I would have played it anyway. Second one, if a hero dismounts for whatever reason, and that hero has selected multiple pieces of wargear, are they forced to discard chosen wargear if there is no legal model to represent that model on foot in the same manner as a warrior? Answer, no, hero models are exempt from this rule. Which makes sense, because there isn't, I don't think anyway, that there is a model of Aragorn with a bow. And there isn't any that you can buy through GW that have him in armor, and yet still he can take armor and a bow and there shouldn't be any problems. I know that it's more in how it interacts with dismounting, but heroes should be exempt. So yeah, just confirmation that they do. Number 3, if a model fighting a monster is being supported by a model with a pike, who is then themselves being supported by another model with a pike, and the monster slays the model it is in combat with, does the monster get to make a free strike on each of the pikes that we're supporting? Answer, yes. Next one, if a model with the Fearful special rule wishes to charge a model with the Terror special rule, how many courage tests does it need to take? Answer 2, 1 for each special rule that requires a courage test. So Terror forces you to take a courage test, and Fearful forces you to take a courage test. Roll 2, hope you pass both, fingers crossed. Next one, if a cavalry model with the Monstrous Charge special rule charges into combat, do they gain +1 attack or +2? Answer, they will gain +1 attack. The two special rules do not stack. Straightforward. Next one, can objective markers or markers that are placed as part of a model's special rule, such as the Vine marker from the Withering Vines magical power, or the marker placed as part of the Invoke the Brunnen special rule in the Rivendell army list, be placed underneath the bases of other models? Answer, no. Straightforward. Final one for this section, objective markers state that a model cannot finish its move overlapping them. Is this also true for markers that are placed as part of a model's special rules, such as Vine markers from Withering Vines magical power, or the marker placed as part of the Invoke the Brunnen special rule for the Rivendell army list? Answer is no. Models may move over these markers and end overlapping them unless otherwise specified. However, as many of these markers require to be removed at the end of a specific phase, players will need to be careful when removing them so they do not move models overlapping them from their original position. So a nice little confirmation there. They are slightly different to objective markers, so no problems there. They all make sense. And the erratas are changed to mounts, so add the following at the end of the paragraph. A mount that is also a hero cannot declare heroic actions. Makes sense to me. I don't know why a mount would be calling heroic actions anyway. Rules as written, they're just confirming it. War beasts and immovable object. Add the following to the end of the paragraph. A war beast is completely unaffected by special rules that would prevent it from activating, moving its full move value, or that would attempt to move it. So, like it says, they are immovable objects. They cannot be moved against their will. Probably doesn't need a clarification in my brain, but rules as written, they're just confirming it there. This one's quite a big change. Spears. Add the following to the start of the 4th paragraph, which is about supporting models in combat. A model can only gain support from one spear-armed model at a time. So, a big change to how I remember spears working in the last edition, because you could stack up, and I think defensively, certainly thematically, it makes sense to have two spearmen behind one sort of sword and board holding a door or a gate or something. But to simplify combat, I guess they have said that only one spear-arm model can support another model in combat. Just a clarification, there we go. I don't know how I feel about that one. Let me know in the comments what you think. So over on to Armies of the Lord of the Rings, and we've got a couple of questions here, and then we've got the errata at the bottom. The errata isn't anything huge. But the FAQ's question, in Legolas' Deadly Shot special rule, does the "so long as he has the inventory keyword" caveat apply only to the not suffering the -1 penalty to hit for moving and shooting part of the rule, or also in the being allowed to make shooting attacks whilst engaged in combat part of the rule? So I'll run through what the special rule is. So this is Deadly Shot in full. Legolas may make 3 shooting attacks during the shooting phase instead of 1, using all the normal rules for shooting. Additionally, Legolas may still make shooting attacks whilst he is engaged in combat and does not suffer the -1 penalty to hit for moving and shooting so long as he has the inventory keyword. If Legolas shoots whilst he is engaged in combat, he may shoot at models he is engaged in combat with, and does not need to make in-the-way tests for shooting at models he is engaged in combat with. though they may still block line of sight as normal. So the clarification is the caveat applies to not suffering the -1 penalty to hit for moving and shooting. So while he has the inventory keyword, he can move and shoot without suffering a penalty to hit. While he's mounted, he does suffer the penalty, but he can still shoot while engaged in combat. It'd be very strong if he was on a horse and he could just use his full movement and still shoot 3 shots. That's quite powerful. I know he's Legolas, but you know, just everybody has limits, alright? We found Legolas's limit. Next one. In the Road to Helm's Deep army list, if Gimli is taken as a passenger on Legolas's horse, can he also lead a warband? No. Question. In the Road to Helm's Deep army list, can Hammer benefit from the Back on Your Horses special rule, as he cannot normally have a horse? The answer is no, but I'm just going to double check that special rule. Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. So Hammer doesn't have a horse, he doesn't have the option to take a horse in this. And all of the other characters, all the other heroes that you can take, are specified to have a horse. So, Back on Your Horses means that an infantry hero model, if it moves into base combat with a friendly cavalry warrior, that cavalry warrior can dismount and give the hero their horse, putting your hero back on a mount and switching out with a model to represent the infantry warrior. You can't do that with Hammer because Hammer isn't allowed to take a horse. Next one. In a Realms of Men army list, which heroic tier are other hero models included in the army? So any hero models included in the army with the exception of Kings of Men will be classified as Heroes of Fortitude. Straightforward. Next one. Does the Crown of Morgul prevent a model benefiting from the standfast of a friendly hero? Answer's no. The Crown of Morgul means that enemy models within 6 inches of the Witch King or attempting to charge the Witch King cannot benefit from special rules that would allow them to automatically pass courage tests. With the exemption of Heroic Resolve is the part that they're referencing there. So it doesn't interact with friendly models, and it does clearly state enemy models within 6 inches. So if it's a friendly hero doing it, he's not an enemy, it doesn't interact with that rule. This one is probably the most interesting one, I think. When a Mordor/Isengard Warg Rider dismounts, what war gear does it get to keep? So, answer, the war gear a Warg Rider, we'll just go with, because I'm repeating a lot of words here, is allowed to keep will depend on the war gear they had whilst mounted. So it's as follows. Warg Riders with shields and throwing spears will dismount and become Orc Warriors with shields. Warg Riders with a bow will become Orc Warriors with a bow. Warg Riders with a shield will become Orc Warriors with a shield. And Warg Riders with just throwing spears will become Orc Warriors with a spear. So they can't throw them, they just have a spear, but they can support models. Final one. What happens with Grima Wormtongue's A Traitor Within special rule if he is taken in an army that does not include Saruman? If Grima is taken in an army that does not include Saruman, then he must be deployed as part of the enemy army and will begin the game already revealed and is treated as a normal enemy model, just as if Saruman has been slain. That's a clarification that probably needed to be done, because it's a rule that interacts with a character when they die, but that all makes sense to me. Couple of changes here with the Errata as well. A lot of these are for the Army of Edoras, or the first few are anyway. So there's a change to Haleth, Prince of Rohan's base profile. He can now take throwing spears at 5 points, and the same with the Army of Edoras army list on page 103. He can also take throwing spears at 5 points. Freylaf, again this is for the Army of Edoras on page 103. Freylaf doesn't have a bow in his base profile. It's written that he can take a bow, but he actually can't take a bow. It's a mistake on the printing side of things, so no, he can't have a bow. Clears that one up. And Rohan Royal Guard, I had to check this one out for myself because I was quite surprised that they weren't allowed horses, being that they're Rohan Royal Guard, but you can take Rowan Royal Guard with a horse with throwing spears, or the new edition, horse and throwing spears, for 7 points. Straightforward. Don't know why it was missed, because you would think if the heroes of an army list are mounted, their bodyguard would be mounted too. An update to the Cirith Ungol special rules, to the Cirith Ungol additional rules. So add the following for this army list. Orc warrior models can only be included in the warband of an orc hero, makes sense. And Uruk-hai warrior models can only be included in the warband of an Uruk-hai hero. That's a theme that runs through these army lists. They don't want you mixing and matching captains and commanders. Again, it's just a streamlining thing. Yes, it might have happened in the books and the films, but in this, they don't want you mixing and matching different types of warriors with heroes. So just streamlining, rules as written, making it simple. Final one for the armies of Lord of the Rings. The muster of Isengard army. You have got a new independent hero. The Uruk-hai drummer has found his way to the battlefield, and he will cost 35 points. So that's a nice little inclusion there as well. And finally, we will jump over to Armies of the Hobbit. I haven't got the army book to reference any of this, so we're just going to wing it, but this is just the one page anyway. So FAQ side of things, we have 4. One of them is the Legolas Deadly Shot, so we'll skip over that. First one, if Bard or Girion are upgraded to the Wind Lance and also have a warband, how does the warband deploy in scenarios that use the Maelstrom of Battle special rule? So the answer, the siege engine will be deployed first, following the normal rules for deploying a siege engine in a scenario using Maelstrom of Battle. The warband will then be deployed within 6 inches of either Bard or Girion. However, every model in the warband must be wholly within 6 inches of the edge of the board. So actually quite restrictive there, but just confirming deployment. The next one is Legolas, we've gone over that. Number 3, do Gwaihir or a Great Eagle mount for Radagast count towards the number of Great Eagles in your army when working out how many fledgling Great Eagles you can take? So the answer, Gwaihir does not count towards the number of Great Eagles, as he does not use the Great Eagle profile. If Radagast takes a Great Eagle as a mount, that counts towards the number of Great Eagles taken. Again, probably quite self-explanatory. Confirmation, it's always a good thing. Finally, for the FAQs, if a Nazgul of Dol Guldur is resurrected via their Unholy Resurrection special rule, do any might, fate and will points that were spent remain spent? Answer, yes. Again, just probably a good clarification. And the errata for the Armies of the Hobbit. Mirkwood Elf Warrior changed the strength characteristic to 3. In the comments, let me know what it was, because I don't have this book, but it seems wild that an elf would be anything else unless they were really special. Radagast the Brown magical powers changed the range of Nature's Wrath to 3 inches. Again, I don't know what it was previously, but it is now a 3-inch range. Survivors of Lake Town Army List, the Master Burglar special rule removed the first sentence, which reads, whilst Bilbo is holding an objective marker in scenarios where this is relevant, he increases his attacks to 2. So no more attack increase for the Master Burglar. The White Council Army Composition, change Elrond Master of Rivendell's points to 170 points. That's his points cost in the Lord of the Rings army book, so I don't know what went on there. It sounds like just a misprint. Page 20, Felwargs. Change the base size to 40mm. I hope that that's what they're released with, because otherwise Felwargs just change base to 40mm. Not 100% sure, but still further clarification, and moving forward they will probably all be on a 40mm base just like Bolg. And finally, the Goblin Captain has had a little bit of an upgrade. Change the warrior keyword to hero. So he no longer interacts with the warrior keyword, he does interact with the hero keyword. That's something that should have not have been missed in print, but these things happen, especially with Games Workshop stuff. There's always little mistakes and things. So that's it for our FAQs. Let me know what you think in the comments and if this interacts differently with anything in your army. I'm always interested to know. As for the future of Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth strategy battle game, I just want to see what's next. I want the models that we've already seen to come out. I want an idea of what's going to be part of a plastic refresh. if we are going to be getting models resculpted. They did an amazing job with the Warriors of Rohan for the box, and I know that's for a new starter box, but why would you stop there when you've done so well? But this isn't an update, this doesn't tell us anything. Alright, they've shown off a new model, but honestly what we need is the Armies of Middle-earth book. We need rules for all of the models that are already released that do not have rules because of the licensing deal that was made in how they had to separate the movies from the books. After years of waiting, there was a new scenario book and some wonderful new Forge World resin models. I know I don't like resin, I bang on about not liking resin, but some of the Arnor models were just gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. I would like them to get rules as well because they're fairly new models and they've just disappeared from the face of the game, which I think is wrong. Give us an idea of when. All they needed to do was at the bottom of this article. We'll be back in August. Oh, and by the way, keep an eye out for this. We're going to have more information very, very soon. If we haven't had a new Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth, sorry, you know what I mean when I say Lord of the Rings. If we haven't had a new Middle-earth release by April, I might start to get a bit fidgety. Because as I mentioned earlier, we're still waiting on Hera, the poster child of the movie. I kind of know why they want to downplay it, but that still shouldn't stop them releasing a model. You know, it would be nice to get something and know what's going on, and just give us an idea. But that's me done for this one. Let me know what you think of these changes. I think the Spears change is pretty big actually, but outside of that, it's just confirmations. We don't really have any games played that have been written down. No real record of anything, so big changes will probably be coming in August if there's going to be any. Hopefully we'll have new stuff to talk about by then as well. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.